Hi, I'm Tom Luna. I'm a former school board member. I was privileged to serve as senior advisor to U.S. Secretary of Education Rod Page. I also had the honor of serving for 8 years as Idaho State Superintendent of Public Instruction. During that time, I also served as president of the Council of Chief State School Officers. One thing I have learned in all these experiences is that educating children is not rocket science, it's more complicated. On my podcast, Swimming Upstream, we will visit with courageous leaders who challenge the prevailing tide and inspire all of us to swim against the current. Let's jump in.
Welcome to another episode of Swimming Upstream. I'm Tom Luna, your host, and we're filming here at the Excel in Ed conference in Atlanta, an annual conference that brings together thousands of educators and education leaders from across the country. And we're excited to have as our guest on Swimming Upstream the Commissioner of Education for the state of Tennessee, Lizzette Reynolds. And thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And we're excited to have you. You're new to the position in Tennessee.
Correct.
Just a few months?
5 months.
So 5 months. So talk to us about kind of what brought you to this position. You've been in a number of states and worked in a number of different areas that prepared you for this.
Well, I mean, it was just really kind of happenstance, honestly. I mean, I had one of the best jobs in the world as VP of Policy here at Excel in Ed, and the best team, the best bosses, you name it, right? So I wasn't really looking for anything, but it's like I tell my friends, it's like I caught the car. And I had given up on that car a long time ago. Like, I stopped chasing it. It was done. I was where I was going to be in my life and my career. And I got the call to come talk to the governor's office in Tennessee, Governor Bill Lee. And again, came at it at a very kind of casual, part of me feeling, wow, what an honor to even be considered. But I came into the interview, really just kind of trying to be as open-minded as possible. When I walked out that door, I knew I wanted to work for that man, and I knew that Governor Bill Lee was the sort of leader that I felt like I was destined to serve. Wow,
so fascinating. And before that, you worked in Texas?
I worked at Excel in Ed, but prior to Excel in Ed, yes, I was a chief deputy commissioner at the Texas Education Agency.
So you had some experience at that level,
SEA,
at the SEA level, and but thought the opportunity maybe to go back and work at that level or higher at an SEA had kind of passed, and you were
pretty
very
much.
happy
I mean, I was
where
number
you're at.
2. I consider myself the perpetual number 2.
Yeah.
And so I mean, I just figured this was that stage in my life where I was going to do what I love to do, which is policy. I love policy. I kind of miss policy. And, it's a lot of, there's a lot of work there that's involved. But at the end of the day, it's become a life-changing experience. Yeah.
Well, you walked into a state that was had a lot of attention has been paid to Tennessee over the past few years, because they've done a lot in the way of some really tough things. Swimming upstream against the current when it came to funding formulas, accountability systems, all those things. So your background in policy, I think, is going to be very valuable as you help and work to implement these policies. But let's talk about some of that work that you are leading now, and the country's still watching, right?
Yeah.
And I suspect you feel that once in a while.
I do. I mean, there's a legacy there with my predecessor and a lot of the work that she led in ensuring that all these policies were passed by the General Assembly in close collaboration with them. And the thing is that Tennessee has a long history all the way, even with, it's been a bipartisan issue in education. And you had Phil Bredesen and Bill Haslam, and then Bill Lee, and they all had education as their top priority, and then selected commissioners of education. You have Kevin Huffman, you have Candace McQueen, that were leaders in their own right, and when it came to running state education agencies. It's been a long legacy. A lot of work has been done, and so I feel like the culmination of all those efforts are where we are today. because we have done so much. So now the time is to execute, right?
Yeah.
Because you can pass laws all day long, you can pass initiatives all day long, but the key is sustainability. And for Governor Lee, he wants to make sure that the policies that are implemented under his administration, that he can look back 20 years from now and go, you know what, I made a difference in education. And so that's the job that I've embarked upon. And so one of the first things that I was tasked with doing was implementing the A through F letter grade system. So the letter grade system, the letter grade accountability system legislation passed in 2016. So there were some little circumstances that happened, and then there was the pandemic.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of things that had kind of come into play that it just so happened that implementation, for one reason or the other, there was a feeling that it wasn't the time. So then it was the time. It's been a long time. And so, yes, I came in July. We immediately started with town halls across the state of Tennessee. I ended up putting like maybe 8,000 miles on the truck.
Yeah.
Crisscrossing. It's a very long state.
So you started in Texas, and you never gave up the truck.
Yeah. Well,
right?
I just didn't drive that much. And again, I was remote for about 6 years. So, but yeah, we did some town halls. We listened. We learned. And then we came into the stakeholder engagement group, same thing. I think there were some guiding principles that I tried to remind people, both at the town halls and through the stakeholder engagement groups, that for me and for my leadership, achievement matters.
Yeah.
Proficiency matters.
Yeah.
And that, unfortunately, was just not the path that was that we had been on, or the journey we had been on. And while we never really implemented or assigned letter grades to schools as per the legislation, we did have some accountability systems in order to be in compliance with the federal system, right? So, and also for designations to be able to identify priority schools and the supports there.
Yeah. So a number of states have done A to F. In Idaho, we did 5-star.
Yep.
Similar approach. But they all looked at different measures and put different weights on different measures. Talk about where was the focus in the measures of for the A to F system in Tennessee?
So we didn't have an actual A through. It had never been assigned, right? But generally, the primary indicator that we basically reformed was the achievement indicator. So prior to where we landed a couple of weeks ago, the achievement indicator had been student proficiency, right? Or your annual measurable outcomes as indicated by the federal accountability system, which were at the very beginning only unique to those school districts. And as we know, in an accountability system, your indicators need to be comparable, right? I mean, that's a big lever of accountability.
Yeah.
And then you had a growth growth indicator, and then some other indicators more in line, like ELL and chronic absenteeism.
So it's a combination of all of those.
So it was, yes, but then you get to pick the best of on the achievement. So it was either achievement or
growth.
or technically this AMO, which was also a growth indicator, plus growth. So there was a lot of double counting of growth.
The district got to make the choices, is what you're saying?
I think, or we were, and again, I should know this, but I think either that or we were, we assigned the better of in that achievement indicator.
Yeah.
So when we came back a couple of weeks ago and made our announcement, we kept achievement and proficiency clean. So it is truly a 50% of the letter grade is achievement. 40% for and this is only for elementary, middle, 40% is growth, and then 10% is your bottom 25%, all students, growth. So also making sure that they're also doing the job that they needed to be doing with their bottom 25%
to get those kids up there,
right? To help move them up.
Yeah.
In high school, we went 50 achievement, 30 growth, 10 bottom 25%, and then we added another 10% around college and career readiness indicator. So ACT 21 or higher, industry credentials, attainment, also in line with some of our TISA outcomes, which is another student-centered funding formula implementation that we're doing right now. So that's where we're at this point at this juncture. Districts are doing their data verification. This is what kind of the boring stuff that comes with accountability, making sure that we've got the data right. And then we will run the letter grades, and then we will publish them at some point in December.
Yeah. Your point you just made, it is kind of the boring and maybe a little, it can be confusing how you come up with the letter grade.
Yep.
But having people have full confidence, right, that the information that you're receiving is accurate and verifiable, and that the funding form, or not the funding formula, but the accountability formula is being implemented correctly.
Yep.
It's just too easy to create distraction if any of those are off by just a bit, right?
Absolutely.
Because then all of a sudden the whole system is in question.
Absolutely.
And people don't have confidence in it.
And we just want to make sure that we're clear, right? It's like I've said, and some people believe me, some people don't, but this isn't about throwing stones or sticks at the public school system at all. 100%. I think the Tennessee school districts are doing an amazing job. They have some amazing leadership, and I'm really honored to stand alongside them. And I know that they're doing a good job. The problem is they knew where they would land under the old indicator system. They don't know, right? And we had a 4-month timeline. Like, again, usually these timelines are at least a year or so. So it was a very quick process. And but there was a lot of work that was done. The team that I work with is amazing. They worked weekends, they worked nights, they did everything, and they are continuing to do that alongside with our contractors to get the best report card available out to with the right data. So that we can share with our families how their schools are doing, and we can share with our school boards how their schools are doing, and we can share with our superintendents and our teachers and our principals how their schools are doing, so that then they have the information based upon the way you cut the data. And I really want to advocate for boys and girls too, after hearing the talk earlier. To really understand and then figure out then where those resources need to go.
Allocate the resources from what you learned from the
from what you learned from the data. Otherwise, you're just hiding the ball, right? And this was always the foundation of accountability, or particularly when I was in Texas, when I was working under now President George W. Bush, and with the leadership of Margaret Spellings, right? It was like, in the aggregate, everybody looked great.
Yeah, right.
But once you sliced and diced the data, then you found out there were a lot of kids being left behind. And we don't want to do that.
Yeah. So let's talk about an important part of this. You go back to George W. Bush, Margaret Spellings, Rod Page, and the work, and one of my colleagues, Doug Mescar, was there as part of that team, right, working on all of this. And the goal was always to an education system that was responsive to all kids. And so therefore, there had to be a way to measure. And first, we needed standards to measure against.
Right.
That has led to where we are today.
Correct.
And what I realized in my 8 years in office and with other state superintendents is, as difficult as it is to get the laws or policies in place, it is probably just as difficult, if not more difficult, to keep them.
Yeah.
And it has everything to do with implementation.
Yep.
So talk about that. That's what you walked into, a state that has passed some pretty impressive reform or modernization, whatever you want to call it, from a funding formula to accountability system, all these different things. And now, how do you keep it?
Yeah.
So talk about that.
And that's just it. Good implementation, a strong team, and really building the capacity within that team to be able to do those things. I mean, as everybody knows, Tennessee did a great bounce back after COVID with the spring, what we call TCAP. It's our a statewide summative assessment system or test. And we were able to at least demonstrate some a significant bounce back on reading. And a lot of it was due to the passage of the Early Literacy Act by the Tennessee General Assembly in collaboration with the Lee administration. And so, but yes, we patted ourselves back. 40% is great, but is that really where we want our kids?
Yeah.
I mean, and it's a little unfortunate that is, and again, COVID had a significant impact on students, on children, right? But we've got to do better than that. And so part of implementation is also adjusting and making sure that we do have the right things in place, that we have the right policies in place, so that we can continue to see success for our students, particularly when it comes to literacy. Now, math, we're not that great. Nobody's really that great across this country, as you know. We got a lot of work to do there, but there are some individual soups that are doing some really great things. And there's one that I just have to mention, and I probably mention her too much, but I'm just so impressed every time I see her data. Because Dr. Linda Cash out of Bradley County, very poor kids, Appalachia. She's doing some great things. Yeah. And the data's showing it. And there's no excuses there. It's just work, and it's hard work. And I've actually met some of her math leadership, and they're just focused on ensuring and adjusting what works. And we have to do the same thing at the department. I think, we think about, like, say this A through F implementation. This is just the baseline, right? And which I try to remind people. This is not a one and done. We're not like, okay, we've done our stakeholder engagement. We've done our town halls. End of story. Closing our ears. We're never going to look at this issue again. We can't. We've got to see the impact and better understand, are we not providing the resources to help these districts improve?
So you're going to learn through implementation and make adjustments along the way from what you learn.
And bring people back, see how things, do a self-evaluation, because at the end of the day, we are accountable to our districts. We're accountable to our kids. We're accountable to our families. And we have to also make sure that the way we do this is actually working in a way that's going to improve outcomes, because at the end of the day, that's what really matters, is outcomes.
Yeah.
And I have been, working with a lot of my colleagues at the national level, a lot of, the advocacy groups and the policy groups. And I think sometimes we get kind of spun out on certain initiatives and activities. But I feel really strongly that we kind of got to bring education back to what we were established to do, which is focus on the academics and academic outcomes for kids.
Yeah.
And thinking about what those outcomes look like so that kids can embark on the pathways they want to do. We can talk about technical education all day, but that doesn't mean that you don't need to learn, that you don't need to be extremely proficient in math and reading. I mean, I had this one supervisor of a TCAT, or Tennessee Technical Colleges, basically, saying, well, I've got some doubts about Algebra 2. And I'm like, getting my back up. Well, we got to make sure Algebra 2 is accessible all across this country, right? Or all across the state. But he's like, my kids need trig. And let me tell you, I'd much rather take Algebra 2 20 times over than trigonometry, which I didn't do very well in, by the way. But it's like, there is a high level of rigor that's needed to be able to enter into the workforce prepared. And we have to stop fooling ourselves thinking that just because people talk career readiness doesn't mean that they shouldn't be academically prepared at the highest levels, because otherwise it doesn't matter which level you go into, apprenticeship, technical, community, or higher ed. If you're not prepared, guess what? You're going to spend your money and your time in remediation classes.
Yeah, getting the training and the knowledge and skills that you didn't get.
Yep.
So let's wrap up by talking about the students themselves. You just talked about how students are going to need to know and be able to do so many different things. Part of the challenge is relevance. kids
Sure.
seeing relevance to what they're learning, right? And career tech can bring a lot of relevance
Sure.
for a lot of kids. But just talk about the students themselves. That is one thing that has brought me back over and over to Excel in Ed, and that is it. At least once a year, there's a conference where you're reminded over and
Right.
over and over again that this is about kids, and the decisions are made what's in the best interest of kids and not what's in the best interest of adults. So
Right.
talk about how
It's always that way,
yeah.
but again, relevance also matters with academics, right? Because if kids can't read or do math and they enter into their middle school years and they're deficient in those areas, guess what? There's not going to be any relevance.
Yeah.
Regardless of what pathways and choices you give them, because they're not going to want to not be able to read in front of their peers. They're also not going to want to not be able to do math in front of their peers. So they're going to drop out. So we can't ever forget. And when I've seen it, well, we don't really find relevance in standardized tests. Well, it's not about the kids. It's about the system. Are they providing the supports and the instruction necessary so these kids can be successful in their academic journey, so then they can make the choices of what they want to do in career technical education. In Tennessee, there was a huge investment, $500 million, to create innovative school models, which again is part and parcel of this kind of combination of relevance and also bringing in the pathways that are going to connect to our Tennessee economy. We've got a commissioner of economic and development workforce, economic and development. We also have a labor workforce that travels the world and recruiting companies to come to Tennessee, and we've got them. We've got the Ford company plant in West Tennessee, calling it Blue Oval City. But they're recruiting them, and then we're talking about the pipeline. We're talking about the readiness. We're talking about the preparedness, not only of the kids, but of the adults as well.
Yeah.
I want us to flip that script, right? I want us to say, yes, our kids are academically prepared. They are prepared in the pathways that you need them to be so that they can enter into your workforce and enter into your pipeline, starting wherever they need to start and continuing to advance. But it can't ever be a terminal pathway. And for many of these companies, it's not a terminal pathway.
Yeah.
And you can start off at one level, but we can't say, oh, great, we can get them at this one level, and then they never move up. And then that's where the recruiting is going to be coming out from outside of the state. And what we need to be preventing is we need to be making sure that we have the folks in place so that those companies can be successful hiring people from Tennessee.
Wonderful. I love your passion. And thanks for all your great work that you did here at the foundation.
Sure.
And now the important work you're doing in Tennessee, because I think there's a lot of us that are really hoping and praying that the work that has been done in Tennessee, that it creates, that 20 years from now people will be looking back and recognizing what happened in 2022 or 23, right? In bringing that forward, and then the implementation work that you're doing.
Yeah.
But so we always end our show by asking this one question, kind of for fun.
Yep.
Share with us one piece of trivia or information about Tennessee that most people wouldn't know.
Well, I don't think people know this because I didn't know this until I saw the trucks. But the moon pie was founded in Chattanooga, Tennessee.
The moon pie.
The moon pie.
Everybody can relate to that.
It's so cool. Yeah. I mean, and I was just like, and there's
that.
also Little Debbie somewhere, but moon pie is the one I know for sure in Chattanooga. And then also we have a bunch of caves, and I can't wait to go explore.
Yeah.
If I ever can get out of the
take some moon
office.
pies with you when you go.
Absolutely,
spelunking or whatever they call that. So.
Yeah, for sure.
Hey, Lizzette, Commissioner Reynolds, thank you so much for being on Swimming Upstream, and appreciate your passion and the good work you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
You bet.
Thank you for listening. And remember, our children may only be 22% of our population, but they represent 100% of our future. If you found this conversation valuable, subscribe to our YouTube channel and find us on your favorite podcast platform. Swimming Upstream is part of the Strategos Podcast Network. To view the entire lineup of our shows, visit our website, strategosgroup.com.